kicked out at 18 to make room for my stepmom's pregnant teen daughter. Hey, before we move on to the video, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Thanks. I never really felt like I belonged in my own home. It wasn't always that way, but after my dad remarried when I was 12, something shifted, and it never shifted back. Before that, it was just the two of us. My mom passed away when I was 6. Cancer. I barely remember her face except through photos, but my dad used to say I had her eyes. For a while, it was us against the world. He worked hard but always made time for me. I'd sit at the kitchen table doing my homework while he cooked dinner. He came to every parent-teacher conference, every birthday party. We weren't rich, but we were a team. Then came Denise. He met her at work. She had a daughter, Kayla, who was 10 at the time, 2 years younger than me. The first few weeks were awkward but manageable. Denise acted sugary sweet around my dad, constantly trying to paint herself as a perfect stepmom. But when he wasn't looking, she'd glance at me like I was dirt under her shoe. I wasn't loud or rebellious, so I just kept my head down. I thought maybe if I stayed out of her way, things would settle. They didn't. Once she moved in, it was clear she wanted a fresh start with my dad and her daughter. I was a leftover from his previous life, and the way she looked at me made it clear I wasn't part of the new picture she was painting. She slowly chipped away at everything that made me feel secure. She started cooking meals she knew I didn't like, claimed it was too expensive to buy my kind of shampoo or laundry detergent, even though she always had fancy organic stuff for her and Kayla. My dad, too exhausted from working late, didn't notice or didn't care. When I brought it up once, he said I was being dramatic, that she was doing her best. Kayla, meanwhile, turned into a mini version of her mother. I don't say that to be cruel, it's just what happened. If I got an A, she got a congratulations banner for AB dash. If I cleaned the kitchen, she got praise for microwaving popcorn. I watched my dad slowly shift from being my support system to someone who walked on eggshells around Denise and treated Kayla like a porcelain doll. Still, I kept going. I studied hard, kept a part-time job at a local diner, and made sure I never gave them an excuse to throw me out. I had one goal: get into college, leave, and never look back. By the time I turned 18, I was in the top 10% of my class, already accepted into a university with a partial scholarship. I was working weekends and saving every cent for books and tuition. My guidance counselor said I was one of the most determined kids she'd ever met. Then came the pregnancy. Kayla was 16. One morning, Denise burst into the house sobbing while Kayla sat stone-faced at the kitchen table. I was in the middle of making oatmeal when Denise screamed at me to give them space. Later that day, I found out Kayla was pregnant. The guy? Some 20-year-old who worked at a vape shop and ghosted her the moment she told him. At first, Denise looked like she was going to collapse from the shame. For 2 weeks, the house was filled with whispers, phone calls, and crying. But then something strange happened. Denise did what Denise always did. She pivoted. Suddenly, the pregnancy wasn't a disaster. It was a blessing, a new beginning. She posted an ultrasound photo on Facebook with the caption, "Every life is a miracle." People started sending baby gifts. Her friends threw her a small shower. But something didn't sit right. The more excited she got, the more uncomfortable I felt. I started noticing the way she was eyeing my bedroom. It was the only other room in the house besides my dad and Denise's and Kayla's. Mine was slightly bigger, with better lighting and more space. One day, I walked in to find Denise measuring the walls. I should have trusted my gut. But I didn't want to believe what I was already starting to suspect. Then, on the evening of my 18th birthday, after work, after school, after I brought home a small cake I bought for myself, they sat me down at the kitchen table. No gifts. No happy birthday. Just two solemn faces pretending this was for my benefit. "We need to talk," Denise said. Dad cleared his throat, avoiding eye contact. "Kayla's going to need her own room for the baby," she began. "You're 18 now, and we think it's time you started living independently." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. "You've got that scholarship," Dad said, trying to sound upbeat. "And college will keep you busy anyway. This is the right time." "I haven't even graduated high school yet," I said. My voice cracked a little. "I still have 3 months left." Denise shrugged. "We're giving you 2 weeks. That should be enough time." I couldn't breathe. 2 weeks. No warning. No offer to help me find a place. No talk about rent or support or storage for my things. Just get out. "I don't have anywhere to go," I said quietly. Denise smiled, not kindly. "You're smart. You'll figure it out." I looked at my dad. I begged him silently to say something, anything. But he just stood there, arms crossed, staring at a spot on the wall like it was all too much for him. I picked up the cake I had bought for myself and walked it straight to the trash can. Then I walked to my room and closed the door. That night, I packed 2 duffel bags. And 2 weeks later, I was gone. The last time I saw my room, it was stripped bare. My mattress leaned against the wall. The closet was empty. The shelves were cleaned out, like I'd never existed. I left a note on the desk. Thanks for everything. It wasn't sarcastic. At the time, I still wanted to believe my dad had just made a mistake. That he'd call me, apologize, tell me to come home. He never did. I spent the first night on the couch of a friend from school. His parents didn't ask too many questions, just gave me a blanket and said I could stay for the weekend. But Monday morning, they told me I couldn't stay any longer. They were already cramped with 3 kids, and I understood. I didn't blame them. I was just another burden someone else hadn't asked for. After that, it was a blur. I tried staying in the break room at work once. The manager caught me and told me not to do it again. I slept in a laundromat bathroom. I parked behind a 24-hour grocery store and slept in my car when I could. It was a beat-up '02 Civic with 1 working window and no heat. I'd bought it with my savings 2 years earlier, thinking it would get me to school and work. Now it was my home. I kept going to school, but I stopped going to first period. I needed that time to drive to a gym with cheap day passes where I could shower. My clothes were always wrinkled. I couldn't focus. I started falling asleep during class. One afternoon, I was called into the principal's office. He said he'd received a report from a teacher that I smelled like mold and gasoline. I told him I was fine. He looked like he didn't believe me, but he didn't press. I walked out of his office knowing I'd hit a new low. My teachers were starting to notice something was wrong. The worst part? I kept trying to tell myself it was temporary, that someone would step in, that my dad would check on me. But every time my phone lit up, it was a work schedule or spam. Never him. I texted him once, maybe 2 weeks after I left. Hey, just checking in. I'm okay. Hope everything's going well with Kayla and the baby. He never responded. A week later, I swallowed my pride and sent another. I could use some help. Just a place to crash for a night or 2. I won't stay long. Still nothing. I stared at the read receipt for an hour before I turned my phone off. I didn't turn it back on for 2 days. Eventually, I got a call from my scholarship counselor. She told me my status was at risk. I'd missed too many meetings, and my midterms had tanked. She asked me what was going on, and I told her I'd been dealing with some personal stuff. I didn't have the energy to lie, but I didn't want her pity. She gave me a deadline, raise my grades, and show up to the next 3 advising sessions, or I'd lose everything. I hung up the phone, sat in my car behind a gas station, and cried until my body hurt. One night, it got so cold I thought I might not wake up. I remember lying in the back seat of the Civic, wrapped in a thin blanket, shivering so hard I couldn't keep my teeth from clacking. I stuffed a hoodie under my knees to stop them from locking up. I thought about walking into the hospital and pretending to be sick just to have a warm place to sit. But I didn't. I just laid there, frozen, humiliated, and small. And through all of it, they lived their life. My dad, Denise, and Kayla were posting smiling photos on Facebook. Baby shower gifts, new nursery paint, a crib where my bed used to be. There was even a photo of Denise holding Kayla's hand with the caption, 3 generations of strong women. My dad liked the post. That's when I blocked all of them. The betrayal wasn't just being kicked out. It was being erased. Like I had never been part of their lives. Like I didn't matter. Once, I drove by the house at night. All the lights were on. I sat in my car across the street, engine off, staring through the living room window. Kayla was sitting on the couch, eating ice cream. My dad walked in with a baby blanket, smiling. I didn't get out. I didn't want to be seen. I just watched them exist in the space I was thrown out of, like nothing had happened. The next day, I threw out everything I had left from that house. An old hoodie, a picture of me and my dad at a baseball game, a birthday card he gave me when I turned 14. It said, "Proud of the person you're becoming." I burned it in an empty field behind the high school. Things got worse before they got better. My car got towed one night while I was asleep in it. Apparently, I was parked in a tow-away zone, but I hadn't seen the sign. I begged them to let me grab my backpack. Everything I owned was inside. They refused. I watched my life get pulled away behind a steel chain. After that, I slept behind dumpsters, behind bleachers, and empty storage units. I got sick, coughed blood one night, and still went to work the next morning. I didn't tell anyone. I had no one to tell. One night, I got lucky. A woman named Lorraine, who worked the breakfast shift with me at the diner, noticed I'd been sleeping in the break room again. She cornered me while I was wiping down tables and asked, gently, if I was okay. I told her I was fine. She gave me a look like she'd heard that lie before. That night, she brought me a bag of groceries and a gift card to a local motel. She said she had a cousin who might know of a cheap room for rent. I took the groceries. I didn't take the room yet, but something about her kindness cracked through the fog in my head. Someone noticed me. Someone cared. I slept in the motel that night. The bed was lumpy, the heat barely worked, and the TV buzzed every 10 minutes. But it was the first time in weeks I'd slept without fear of being kicked, robbed, or frozen half to death. I laid there and stared at the ceiling for hours. I made myself a promise. I was going to survive. And someday, somehow, I was going to make them regret every second of what they did to me. The motel stay was only meant to last one night. I told myself that over and over. I didn't want to get comfortable. I couldn't afford it anyway. But in that sagging bed, under a scratchy brown blanket with a flickering light overhead, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Silence. Real silence. No cars passing. No drunk guy yelling at his steering wheel. No fear of being found. Just me, alone, breathing, warm. It was enough to start thinking again. The next morning, I went back to the diner early and waited for Lorraine to come in. She showed up carrying a thermos of coffee and a tired smile like she always did. I thanked her awkwardly, and she waved it off like it was nothing. But it wasn't. That motel room may have saved my life. You still got that cousin? I asked. She nodded. You serious? Yeah. I'm done freezing to death. Her cousin owned a fourplex about 30 minutes outside town. It wasn't much, a converted garage behind a two-bedroom unit. One small window, a hot plate, and a bathroom that smelled like mildew. But the rent was cheap. Dirt cheap. And he was willing to overlook my lack of credit if I paid month to month in cash. I took the room. I got a mattress off Craigslist and hauled it in my trunk. I cleaned the place until my fingers bled. The first night, I slept on that mattress with no sheets, no furniture, and one hoodie as a blanket. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. I had four walls, a roof, a door that locked, my name on a mailbox. It wasn't home, but it was mine. School was still a mess. I couldn't fix my GPA overnight, and I'd already missed too many deadlines to recover my scholarship. But I walked into my guidance counselor's office, told her everything, homelessness, eviction, all of it, and watched her go pale. You should have told us, she said. I shrugged. Didn't know how. She made some calls, pulled some strings, got me a spot in a community college program with flexible scheduling. They couldn't replace the scholarship, but they could get me enough aid to finish the year. It was the first real break I'd had in a long time. I juggled classes and work, nights at the diner, weekend shifts at a warehouse. I never stopped moving. I stopped checking social media. I stopped thinking about them, my dad, Denise, Kayla, unless I needed the anger to push through a long shift. There was no room for bitterness. Not yet. Only momentum. I didn't have time to grieve what I'd lost. I had to keep my head above water. Still, sometimes it hit me. Like the day I got an email from my old high school, a photo album of graduation night. There was my class, caps in the air, families hugging. I wasn't in a single picture. No one had noticed I was gone. No where's the name. No empty chair. Just absence. I almost deleted the email. Instead, I saved it. I wanted to remember how that felt. It took 2 years to finish my associate's degree. I walked across the stage wearing a borrowed cap and gown. No one cheered. No one clapped. But I smiled so hard it hurt. I went on to a state university next. Majored in business. I knew I wanted something stable, something powerful. I wanted to be the kind of person people had to notice. I interned at a real estate office during the summers. At first, I filed paperwork and fetched coffee. But I watched. I listened. I asked questions. I studied every conversation, every deal. I learned how the city worked, how people bought and sold land, how wealth moved quietly behind doors most people never saw. After graduation, I got hired full-time. Started in leasing. Moved to acquisitions. By the time I was 24, I was overseeing investment properties and learning how to flip distressed homes for profit. I never made a big deal out of my past. Most people assumed I was just another quiet guy who worked hard. I liked it that way. The less they knew, the more power I had. I moved into a small condo. I bought furniture for the first time in my life. I cooked meals that didn't come in cans. I joined a gym. I saw a therapist. I stopped waiting for apologies. I started building something that no one could take away. By 26, I had savings, credit, a portfolio. I bought my first property outright, a one-bedroom fixer-upper with rotted floors and bad plumbing. I gutted it, renovated every inch, flipped it in 6 months for triple the price. That was the moment everything changed. I realized I didn't just want to survive. I wanted power. I wanted leverage. And not because I needed revenge. Not anymore. But because I wanted the ability to never need anyone ever again. Then, one day, a listing crossed my desk. An older property on the edge of town. 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Decent bones, but outdated. The owner was behind on taxes. The bank was getting ready to foreclose. The address made my blood freeze. It was their house. My father's house. The house I'd been kicked out of the moment I turned 18. The house where Kayla had set up a crib in my old room. The house where Denise told me I'd figure it out. The bank's auction date was in 2 weeks. I sat there for 10 full minutes, staring at the screen, rereading the address over and over. At first, I didn't move. I didn't think. Then, slowly, I clicked submit bid. Not under my name. That would have been too easy. I used the LLC I created last year, one I used for acquisitions. Clean. Anonymous. Legal. A few days later, I got the confirmation. My bid was accepted. The house was mine. And this time, no one was going to throw me out. I didn't visit the house right away. Even after the papers were signed and the title was transferred to my LLC, I couldn't bring myself to drive over. Just seeing the address on the deed stirred something deep in my gut. Equal parts rage, grief, and something colder, purpose. I waited 3 days. Then, one quiet morning, I parked across the street like I'd done all those years ago, engine off, windows cracked. But this time, I didn't feel small. I wasn't the invisible kid looking in. I was the owner, the one with power, the one who held the ground under their feet. The front yard was a mess. Grass knee-high, paint peeling off the shutters, a cracked front step. The house looked tired, defeated. Good. I waited until the following Monday to send the first notice. A formal letter, printed on my LLC letterhead, addressed to current occupants. Polite, businesslike, but firm. It explained that the property had been foreclosed and purchased by a private real estate investment entity. The new owner, me, intended to inspect the property for structural assessment and repairs. They had 30 days to vacate. I didn't sign my name, just the company title. It was a small act of revenge, but a calculated one. I didn't want them to see it coming. 2 weeks passed. No response. I sent another letter, this one taped to the front door and delivered by certified mail. A week later, I got a phone call. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Hi, I'm trying to reach the owner of address. We got a notice. There must be a mistake. It was Denise. Her voice hadn't changed at all. I paused. Let the silence build. Then I said, calmly, there's no mistake. A beat passed. Who is this? I almost told her. But I wasn't ready yet. Not quite. You'll need to vacate by the end of the month, I said. Or I'll begin formal eviction proceedings. You can't just throw us out, she snapped. We've lived here you were renting from the bank, I said. You stopped paying. The bank foreclosed. I bought it. You're not entitled to stay. I could feel the panic in her breath. She was scrambling for something, anything. But we have a child. My daughter has a child. You can't. I hung up. A day later, I got another call. This time, it was my dad. I let it ring. Then I picked up, waited. Hello. His voice sounded older, smaller. I just heard what's going on with the house. Is this real? I said nothing. Listen, I don't know what your plans are, but we're trying to figure things out. It's been a rough year. I lost my job last winter. Denise has been sick. We were going to get current again. Just needed more time. My voice came out calm, measured. You had time. The bank gave you 2 extensions. You ignored both. Then I bought the house. Now it's mine. A pause. Wait, do I know you? He asked. You sound. I hung up again. I didn't block the number. I wanted him to sit with that feeling. A week later, I drove to the house to begin prep for the eviction. I had every legal right. I brought a property inspector with me, a quiet guy in his 50s who'd seen everything. As we approached the door, I saw them through the window. Denise, standing in the hallway, arms crossed. Kayla on the couch, holding a baby. My old room, now a makeshift nursery, visible through the half-open door. My stomach turned. Not from guilt, but from memory. How fast they'd moved to erase me. How quickly they'd replaced me. Denise opened the door. She looked thinner, more weathered. Still held herself like she expected to win. "You can't just barge in," she snapped. I handed her the notice. "This is a scheduled inspection. I'm entitled." Then I turned to the inspector. "Start in the kitchen. Check for water damage. I'll do the garage." Denise grabbed my arm. "Who are you?" I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Someone you taught to survive." Her face froze. Behind her, my dad appeared. He looked worse than I remembered. Pale, slouched, hollow-eyed. "Wait," he whispered. Is it you?" I didn't answer. I walked past him, through the house, into the garage where I used to sneak away and dream of escape. Now I was walking through it as the owner. After the inspection, I gave them one final notice, 7 days. Then the sheriff would be involved. The next few days were full of emails, voicemails, desperate calls. They begged, pleaded. My dad even showed up at my office once, unannounced, and asked the front desk to speak to the owner. I had security escort him out. The day before the eviction, I got one last call. It was Kayla. Her voice was quiet, almost shaking. "I know you hate us," she said. "I know we don't deserve anything from you. But please, don't do this to my kid." He didn't ask for any of this. For a moment, I felt the tiniest crack in my resolve. Then I remembered the night I turned 18. The cake in the trash. My father's silence. The backseat of my Civic frozen solid. "I was a kid too," I said, "and none of you gave a damn." Then I ended the call. They were gone the next day. I watched the moving truck pull away from the curb while sitting in my car across the street. Just like I had years ago. Only this time, they were the ones looking back. They saw me. They knew. Denise looked furious. My dad looked wrecked. Kayla didn't look at me at all. I didn't wave. I didn't smirk. I just watched. Later that night, I walked through the empty house. My old room had holes in the wall and broken baseboards. The carpet was stained. The nursery paint was peeling. I stood in the middle of it all and took a long breath. Then I pulled out my phone and called a contractor. I had plans. Not just for renovation, but for replacement. Everything they erased, I was going to rebuild it. Better. Stronger. And this time, no one would ever take it from me again. The house took 6 months to renovate. I didn't cut corners. Everything they had let rot, I restored. New floors, new wiring, new drywall. The kitchen was gutted and rebuilt with quartz counters and custom cabinets. I knocked down the wall between the living room and dining room to open it up. The bathroom that had always smelled like mold? I turned it into something out of a luxury magazine. I even replaced the front step. The paint color was the same, though. A dusty gray blue I remembered from when I was 10. Back before things got ugly. Back when it still felt like a home and not a battlefield. I debated keeping the house for myself, just to have it, just to say I lived there again, on my terms. But I didn't want to sleep in the place where I was erased. I didn't need that anymore. So I rented it out. Not for profit. I handpicked a young couple, first-time parents, working 2 jobs between them, saving every penny. I gave them a rent rate they could afford, far below market. I saw myself in them. I wanted them to have the kind of start I never did. It felt like justice, the quiet kind. But the louder kind wasn't finished with me yet. It started with a letter. A scrawled return address I almost didn't recognize. A name I hadn't seen in years. My dad. I sat with it for a week before opening it. Inside was a half-page note. No greeting. No signature. I was wrong. I see that now. I made you feel invisible because I didn't know how to look at what I'd done. You didn't deserve any of it. If you hate me forever, I understand. But I hope you don't. I didn't respond. Not out of anger. I just didn't know what to say to a man who had let his own son become a stranger. A month later, Denise messaged me through my LLC's website. Her tone was different. Less venom. More confusion. "I can't believe you did that to us. But maybe we deserved it. We were cruel to you. I know that now. Kayla and I talk about it a lot. She wants to say something too, if you'll listen." I deleted the message. Forgiveness wasn't theirs to request. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Kayla tried once too. A private message on a social app one forgot I still had. "I was just a stupid teenager. I didn't realize how much I hurt you. I'm sorry. I hope you're okay." I left it unread. She knew what she'd done. I remembered every moment she looked through me like I was some burden she had to outgrow. Every time she watched me fade out of the room like background noise. She had everything handed to her, my room, my space, my family, and she never once asked if I was okay. I wasn't about to give her closure she didn't earn, but I wasn't angry anymore. What I'd done, buying the house, evicting them, rebuilding it, had washed that bitterness out of me like a storm. What I felt now was something simpler. Distance. They were no longer the center of my pain. Just a story I used to be in. And I was writing my own story now. I kept building. Bought more properties. Flipped some. Rented others to families who reminded me of who I used to be. I made it a rule. If someone came to me in crisis, I'd listen. No one who worked full-time would be left to freeze in their car on my watch. I joined a nonprofit that helped displaced young adults find housing. Gave speeches sometimes. Told my story. Not to shame the people who hurt me, but to give others a sense that they weren't alone and that escape was possible. People started to look up to me, asked me how I did it. I always told them the truth. I was broken. I was erased. I was made to feel like nothing. And I came back, not in spite of that, but because of it. Because when you know what it's like to be thrown away, you learn exactly how to never let anyone do it again. One day, I was walking past a coffee shop near my condo when I saw someone sitting inside. Denise. She looked older. Her hair was thinner, and she had deep lines around her eyes. She was sipping coffee slowly, watching cars pass, her expression dull and tired. She didn't see me. I could have walked in. Could have said something dramatic. Something final. But I didn't. I just watched for a second. Then I turned and kept walking. She didn't need to know me anymore. She didn't deserve to. Because in the end, the best revenge wasn't eviction. It wasn't silence. It wasn't cutting them out or making them beg. It was living well. It was being free. And I was free. No longer forgotten. No longer invisible. No longer anyone's discard. Just me. And that was more than enough.